Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of the Daily Stand-Up. My name is Lee Henson, president and founder of AgileDad, and without any further ado, let's get started. So we have another one of your questions today. My good friend Amber writes, do you have any ideas or videos or articles on creating a team working agreement? How do you go about doing that? Once again, the questions have just been outstanding. I've been very, very impressed. So my good friend Diana Larson, she's the one who wrote the book Agile Retrospectives. I know that she worked together, I believe it was with Esther Derby, if I'm not mistaken, and she came up with a 5-step technique to write good working agreements, to write good team working agreements. And I think that, if we follow these 5 steps, we'll probably be a lot closer to where we need to be. So step 1 is called set the stage. And this is where you work with the team and describe exactly what you're about to do, right? You might open with something like, becoming a team involves us to have open communication and a commitment toward working together and supporting each other in order to reach a common goal. In order for us to better do this, we're going to create a document, a short document, a protocol of how we're going to work together and what type of things we're going to do so that we can maximize our capability to deliver a high quality product or service. Make it something really cool, really tangible. But the key here in set the stage is to make sure that the team understands the why behind the what. We don't want to make them feel like, oh, brother, they're just creating something else that we have to agree to. You want to make certain that you're giving the team something that helps them feel empowered and something that helps them feel like, hey, this is something we created and something that we can be proud of. I think step 2, if I'm not mistaken, was gathering data. And this is where each team member writes down things that are most important for them to achieve. This can be done on sticky notes or on a whiteboard, or you can add sticky notes to the whiteboard, however you want to do this. There's great ways you can do this. You can even use online tools for remote teams. So I know there's one, I believe it's called Fun Retros, that gives you the ability to do this. So there's also a lot of web whiteboards and sticky notes out there. There's lots of ways to do this, is what I'm trying to say. But each team member could be limited to like 2 or 3 items when it comes to gathering data. That way you're not gathering too much data. And you want to encourage 2 items per team member. So I would say at least 2, but no more than 4. That's kind of my guideline. And you might suggest some high-level topics that need to be addressed, like maybe the time and location of our daily scrum, what type of testing strategies we're going to follow with regard to unit, functional, integration, performance testing, stress testing, those kind of things. We might have building an infrastructure plan or shared responsibilities within and beyond teams. Team norms, being on time, respecting estimates, helping when needed, just those kind of things. How to address things that are mid-sprint interruptions. We had that conversation yesterday and we have it again coming up, right? What about product owner availability? And what's the best way to reach them? What are our expectations of each role and how they work together? I think that's incredibly important to have a distinction and identification of each role. That comes from the Agile 12-step program. I also think as we start to work remote that it's important for us to address some remote rules. Do we have some core business hours? Are we going to hold our daily stand-up in a specific way? How are we going to generate insightful and meaningful norms? Speaking of which, the 3rd step is to generate insights. Each item that's added by the team members needs to have a small discussion around it. It doesn't need to be long-winded. It should just be an open discussion on each topic to gather enough context to see if it can be grouped with something similar. That way we're not overwhelming or trying to create a multi-page document. We want to make sure we have a column for working agreement items, right? And as you go through top to down, you can drag into a second column called groups. And if an item exists in a group column and you agree it's similar, you can merge the items. So go ahead and just merge all your items together and make sure that corresponding items fall together in the same group. It's kind of like grouping an epic together, right? If you're doing it in person, obviously you can do the same thing using sticky notes or whatever the case may be. Sometimes what I'll do is, in order to help the team really stay focused on the most important items, I'll then use like a voting priority, like dot voting or something along those lines, just to make sure that we stay focused on the things that are going to be of the greatest value inside of this, because we want to keep this meeting short and sweet. We don't want it to take too long. In fact, my rule, I try to keep every single meeting on the planet to an hour or less. So next is we need to decide what to do. This is step 4. And I think that for each group, we can make sure there are clear actions for the items if applicable. So if you're talking about how to deal with unplanned issues, whether you're going to implement Team John, or you're talking about how to arrange for spikes, or what is our definition of ready, you want to make sure that you have a clear definition or an answer for those things, not just a topic. You want to make sure that you have the team agrees, or the product owner agrees, or whatever the case may be. And we have clear marked items that show exactly how we're going to do things. Sometimes we find that, and we want to remind a team that just because we put it in a team working agreement initially doesn't mean that it's set in stone. We'll have a period for revisions, and during a retrospective we can go back and we can revisit those and make sure that it's important for us to realize that we will come across impediments based on our working agreement, and we'll need to make some adjustments in order for us to better work together. And then finally, we want to have a closeout, if you will. One of the things that I use, of course, is Fist of 5. I've talked about that quite a bit, where we use the metric of 0 to 5 to really express what level of agreement we have with what we've come up with. And it's a great way to get the team to come to consensus. And this helps when facilitating any type of discussions, not just working agreements, but it allows for the team to get their head around, 5's wild, unbridled support. 4, it's a fine idea. I wish I would have thought of it. 3, I can live with the support to decision. 2, I have reservations. I'd like to think about it. 1, this is a really bad idea. I don't support it. And 0, I'm an unbiased observer. I just wanted to get my vote in. And if you time box each section and limit the WIP of the number of inbound items, what I can tell you is you can usually knock out a really solid working agreement in an hour or less. There's some other, there are tons of articles about this online. What I can tell you is, the best way to do this is trial and error. Don't be afraid to sit down with your team and say, hey, we want to put something together, and what do we see it looking like if we work together? What do we see this agreement looking like? My only other guidelines are try to keep it down to, keep the meeting down to an hour or less, definitely, but try to keep the working agreement to a single page if possible. And I know sometimes that's hard, but try to keep it down to one page. And what I found is if you keep it short, sweet, and relevant, something that the team can get their head around, and something that you never want to hear somebody say, but on page 19 of our team working agreement it says, nobody's ever going to read 19 pages, much less remember what they say. Let's keep it something that's short and relevant, and I think you'll have great success. So once again, that's a masterful question. It was awesome, and I really appreciate you throwing it out there. If any of you have questions that you'd like for us to answer here on the Daily Stand-Up, don't be afraid to ping us at learnmore@agiledad.com. We would love to answer your questions and address your issues. So on behalf of the entire team at AgileDad, we want to remind you to stay healthy, stay well, stay active, stay agile, and take care, my friends. Until next time.